Well, for more on U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross's trip to China, I'm joined by Stephen Gu. He's the Director of U.S.-China Business Advisory Services. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So given the roller coaster we've seen of trade dialogue and cooperation and then this pushing through with more tariffs, what are the expectations for Commerce Secretary Ross's visit and the demands being made?
Well, I think if the second round of talk, the agreement reached is being putting the trade war on hold. I think for this round, I think probably Secretary Ross will be focused on to negotiate a framework that can eventually turn into a binding agreement between private sectors. I think he's going to continue to negotiate on specific commitments, for example, on the purchase of agriculture products or the energy commodities. Now, but I think that the the Chinese side probably will be reluctant to get locked into this long-term commitment, and they will insist on negotiating under the current WTO rules. So there are still lots of opening items and lots of differences on lots of issues. So this is why I think this is just start of the longer process. They're going to continue to negotiate, and I highly doubt there will be anything significant will be reached at this round.
Now, Stephen, ahead of the trade talks, we saw Secretary Ross take a hard line recently at the Milken Global Conference, saying, if you just do nothing, we know how that turns out. More and more trade deficit, and that's not acceptable to this administration. What are your thoughts on how that might play out?
Well, I think right now China is kind of moving more towards the pro-trade policy, and the U.S. sounds like they are moving towards more protectionism policies. There was a joke during the Davos Forum in the year that people fear U.S. and China have switched the parties, and China is talking more like what the U.S. used to be. I think the decision for U.S. to getting tougher on the trade and getting a much tougher protectionism policy is mainly pushed by its voter pressure. I think this administration tried to fulfill its pledge to the steel workers who has complained of the lack of protection for a long time. Now, the protection may have a siren-like appear because potentially they can offer some benefit in a short term to those segments being protected, but in the longer term, it will be definitely destructive. And the U.S. see lots of money and the resource will be spent and will be allocated at the sectors that no longer have the competitive advantages.
Now, Stephen, we know that the U.S. is alleging national security concerns with some of these tariffs, and that circumvents the World Trade Organization. So if WTO rules are being ignored or worked around, what incentive is there for China or other countries to try and negotiate new trade pacts with the U.S.?
I think this is mainly triggered by the U.S. side. It depends how do you understand, how do you think about the so-called national security concern. To a certain extent, if you have defense or some sensitive sectors, yes, but I don't believe, say, agriculture or some other products you should raise national security concerns. So I think different countries still should follow the WTO rules, still should be negotiated, talked under the WTO regulations.
Now, as we know, with Commerce Secretary Ross's visit, he will be there for a few days, and we also have some deadlines that are approaching for these tariffs as well. What should we be keeping an eye on as these talks are ongoing?
Well, I think the Secretary Ross's position will probably still continue to keep the dialogue going, and the most recent tariff threat, I think it means to strengthen Secretary Ross's position. But it sounds to me it's more like they are playing a good cop and a bad cop. The more Trump is irritating all the allies and demanding China to buy in more, I think the better the Ross team is, because they are not sitting there attacking difficult issues. But will this strategy work? And I highly doubt. I think China will continue to continue the negotiation under its own turn, its own pace, its own principle. As a matter of fact, I think this tactic will not only not help the negotiation, but it's going to probably put the intended settlement at a risk, because this may fuel some nationalistic cause for China to get into a much tougher stance against the U.S. demand.
All right, thank you as always for your insight. Stephen Gu there, Director of U.S.-China Business Advisory Services.